Dr. Wayne Dyer is an internationally renowned speaker and is regularly called the father of motivation. He's the author of more than 30 books. His latest is called Excuses Be Gone. You might know him as he's regularly featured on national public television specials. And this month, you can see him in Success Magazine in our coveted feature as the Success Legend. Dr. Dyer holds a doctorate in education counseling from Wayne State University and was an associate professor at St. John's University in New York. Despite his childhood spent in orphanages and foster homes, Dr. Dyer has overcome many obstacles to make his dreams come true. Today, he spends much of his time showing others how to do the same. Dr. Dyer recently starred in the movie The Shift that explores the journey that often occurs in the second half of life when we long to find the purpose that is our unique contribution to the world. Dr. Dyer, welcome to Success. It's such a delight to have you with us today.
Thank you. It's great to be with you.
So let's start off here, Dr. Dyer, with your movie, The Shift. You talk about how people get off course from their real purpose in life because they're too caught up in ego. First of all, how does society tend to train us to be ego-centered?
If you look at the first 9 months of your life, that invisible intelligence that allows everything to be, that does nothing but leaves nothing undone, is in charge of it all. And in those first 9 months, we don't get concerned about what color our eyes are going to be or whether our heart's going to start beating. All of a sudden, something magically, invisibly just turns the heart on, it starts beating, and there's nothing for the mother to do, there's nothing for us to do. And then we are born 9 months later, and we take this beautiful little creation of our source, of God, and we say, great work, God, we'll take over from here. And in the process of taking over, we edge God out, which is what I call the acronym for ego. We edge God out. We take on a false self. Instead of understanding our connection to everyone and knowing that we all originate from the same source, we start to be in competition with everyone else because we feel that if we don't get ahead of them, then they're going to get our piece of the pie. And then we start believing that we're separate from what's missing in our life, instead of understanding that if this source that we come from, if you call it God, this source is in everything. There's no place that it is not. And if there's no place that it's not, then it must be in you. And it also must be in everything that you perceive to be missing from your life, that in some magical, invisible way, we're all connected to everything that we would like to attract into our lives. We just have to figure out a way to realign ourselves to make that happen. So that's what The Shift really is about. That's what the film is really about. It's helping people to make the shift away from the ego and into a sense of purpose and meaning in their lives.
So Wayne, tell us how we can benefit from not getting caught up in ego.
There's a wonderful line in Herman Melville's book, Moby Dick. Ahab, the central character of this book, everyone so often thinks that he's just out there on a quest for this whale, but basically this is a symbol for someone who's really looking to find himself, and is throughout all of the writing of that. And he had these words as he was describing Moby Dick. He said, "For as this appalling ocean surrounds the verdant land, so in the soul of man lies one insular Tahiti, full of peace and joy, but encompassed by all of the horror of the half-lived life." And I think within each and every one of us there is this desire for this peace, this place of joy, this inner Tahiti, if you will. But the half-lived life is the life that is defined by the ego. And the less we defend it, and the more we allow ourselves to move back into a place of kindness, of love, of reverence for all of life, of gentleness, of serving others instead of thinking about ourselves and letting the ego go, I think not only will our lives improve, but I think our world will get off of this brink of terror that we all live under.
Yeah, indeed.
The ego's message is always, the more you get, the more you do, the more you accumulate, and you have to strive after that. You have to try to get as much as you possibly can. And so you spend a lot of your life in accumulating and achieving and so on. As you become less obsessed with that, you begin to realize that you don't want anything. You start shedding things. You start getting back to that place that T.S. Eliot spoke about in one of his great poems. He said, we shall not cease from exploration, but at the end of all of our exploring will be to return to the place from which we originated, but to know it for the first time, to know it for the first time.
That's great. So you suggest, Wayne, that people make choices not from their ego, but from their authentic selves. So tell us how people can make the shift towards their authentic selves then.
It starts with like a desire to want to feel more purposeful, to want to feel more meaning. 4 years ago, I get rid of everything that I had, all my accumulation, and I decided to live on the basis of something called the Tao Te Ching. The Tao Te Ching was written 2,500 years ago by one of the great spiritual masters. His name was Lao Tzu. There's 81 verses in the Tao Te Ching, and I decided to practice it and to live by it, and then to write an essay about each one of those 81 verses in a book called Change Your Thoughts, Change Your Life. It's the book of living the virtues of the Great Way. And these virtues are these cardinal virtues that Lao Tzu spoke about, and that I've written about, and that I practice and live in everything that I do now. There are 4 of them. One of the first of them is what he called reverence for all of life. So you find your highest authentic self by having reverence for life, not only your life and the life of other people, but the life of all creatures on the planet, and the planet itself, and all of the vegetation, everything, to have a reverence for it, rather than a need to destroy it and overcome it. That's the first step. Mm-hmm. The second of these cardinal virtues, to find the authentic self, is what he called gentleness, which manifests itself as kindness. To be in a place where you don't have to overwhelm anything. You see the unfolding of God and Spirit in everything and everyone, and you treat everyone that way. Oftentimes on my radio show on Hay House Radio, I will say, when they say, well, how do I get along with this person or that person? I say, the peace that you want for yourself, want it more for others than you want it for you. Want it more for the person that you have the most difficulty in life with. That's what that gentleness is. And the third of those cardinal virtues is what Lao Tzu called a natural sincerity, being truthful, living a sense of truth, and truthful doesn't mean just not stealing and being honest. It means coming from that internal place of your divinity, which you lost in the development of this ego of ours. And finally, he said the fourth cardinal virtue is being in service to others, extending and taking the focus off of yourself. And instead of saying the mantra of the ego, which is more, 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 how much more can I accumulate, how much stuff can I have, shift away from that and make your inner mantra, how may I serve? What may I do to make your life better? And as you do that, you begin to understand Thoreau's definition of success. And the title of your wonderful magazine is Success. And the best definition I've ever heard of success was written by Thoreau in his essay on the necessity of civil disobedience. He said, if you advance confidently in the direction of your own dreams and endeavor to live the life which you have imagined, you will meet with a success unexpected in common hours. In other words, you have to let it chase after you instead of you chasing after it. And as you get good at that, and there's a wonderful little a story that is told of a little kitten chasing its tail out in an alley. You've probably seen this happen with kittens just chasing and chasing and chasing, and this old alley cat comes up to it and says, well, what are you doing? And the little kitten says, oh, I was at cat philosophy school, and in cat philosophy school we learned 2 things. The first thing that we learned in cat philosophy school is that the most important thing in the world for a kitten is happiness. And secondly, we learned that happiness is located in our tail. So I've decided that if I chase after it and get a hold of it and get a grip on it, I'll have an eternal lock on happiness. And the old alley cat looked at the kitten and said, I haven't had the same advantages you've had. I've been out here in the alleys most of my life just trying to make it. But I've discovered the same thing, that indeed the most important thing in the world for a cat is happiness, and indeed also that it's located in my tail. He said the difference between you and I is that I've discovered that when I go about my business and do the things that are important to me, it follows after me wherever I go. Mm-hmm. It's like, let it come to you. Let it come to you.
That's great. So Wayne, on that note, here at Success, we're always encouraging people to take control of their lives, to not be victim to circumstances and situations. So what's the balance for people to strike between surrendering to life and taking personal responsibility for their own lives?
There was a time when, in my own life, when I would be concerned with what other people thought of me. I would check on where my books were on the bestseller list. I would check and see what the reviews were, and if they were bad, I would let myself get worked up about those kind of things. And they would create sort of an inner kind of angst in me and an anxiety and so on. And then as I allowed myself to become much more attuned to spirit, if you will, and less aligned with the ego and having to accumulate and having to win and having to look good in other people's eyes and all of those kind of things. As that became less and less important to me, I found myself not being concerned with these things at all. Eleanor Roosevelt said it so well. She said, no one can make a fool of you without your consent. No one can engage you, can make you unhappy, can make you depressed unless you consent to that. One of my favorite stories is from a fellow, his name was H.L. Mencken. He was writing back in the 1920s and 30s. He was a columnist like Art Buchwald later, who would just do satires and so on. And he would get all of these critical letters directed towards him. And finally, one day he wrote a column. I saved that column. I cut it out from years and years ago. It's a classic. And he said, in case anybody out there wants to find fault with me or wants to criticize me, this is my letter to you. And he said, I am sitting here in the smallest room in my house. Now, you can imagine what room that is. I'm sitting here in the smallest room in my house with your letter of criticism before me. Soon it will be behind me. H.L. Mencken. Yeah. And I often thought that was a wonderful sort of way of just, symbolically saying, you're not going to be anybody's victim unless you allow that. And if you're in a place of peace, and that's the way that you live, when you are around other people, they will never be able to drag you down and bring you into a lonely or a saddened place. They said of Jesus that when he would enter a village, just his presence in the village and nothing more would elevate the consciousness of everyone in the village. I walked into a room one time where Mother Teresa was in Phoenix, Arizona. And when she walked into the room, the energy of the room changed. And there was sort of like a peacefulness because she has this like extremely high calibration of a being who is aligned with what I call source energy, with God. I mean, she's what we call a God-realized person, which is what my goal has been, living a God-realized life. And when Mother Teresa was there, listen to this. This is so beautiful. She was being interviewed by Pat McMahon, who was the host of the show. And he said to her, is there anything that I can do for you? We have a 50,000-watt radio station here. I could raise a lot of money for you. I could help your mission in Calcutta. And she kept saying, no, Pat, there's nothing. Finally, he got down on his knees. He was an Irish Catholic guy who was so impressed that he had Mother Teresa there in his room. Finally, he said, isn't there anything I can do for you? And she looked at him and she tapped him on the shoulder. Now, she's about 4'10", probably weighed 80 pounds. And she said, there is one thing you can do if you wanted help. And he said, what? She said, tomorrow morning, get up at 4 a.m. and go out onto the streets of Phoenix and find someone who's living there who believes that he's alone. And you convince him that he's not. That's what you can do. And that's how you reach your authentic self. And it's really just about letting the divine grow within you. It's about, knowing who you are and being willing to come from a place of integrity, of kindness, of gentleness, of non-judgment towards anyone, and listening and being more open to how may I serve? How can I reach out and make your life better? And by doing so, you understand what Thoreau meant when he said, then it will chase after you wherever you go. That's the way I look at it.
I want to see if I can make these distinctions as clear as possible for our readers. I understand to not resist your critics and to not get caught up in their drama, but the concepts of non-interference and letting go and surrendering, how does that work with taking charge of your business and your finances and your relationships and your health with goal setting and charting a course, taking control of your actions and going confidently in that direction? The idea of personal growth, it almost seems like those two can be at odds. This non-interference, this letting go, this surrendering versus setting goals and creating plans in which to achieve them and taking control of your relationships and your finances. So where's the balance between those two concepts, or are they different?
I live from a perspective of reaching out and serving. And when you do that, your business grows. You want to be around people who are reaching out, who are not so concerned with what's in it for them. When you go into a restaurant and you meet a waiter who's more concerned with how what's happening for him than he is for you, you don't want to go back to that restaurant. But when you're there with someone who just reaches out to you and cares about you and goes the extra mile and does a little bit more for you and says, "Is there anything else that I can do to help you?" You want to come back. You want to. But when someone sells you a car like that, if they're selling you a car from a perspective of they're trying to make a lot of money for themselves and they know that they got a big commission coming, and you can read that and you see that, my inclination is to move away from that kind of energy. But when I'm with someone who just loves what they're doing and loves the products that they have and comes from that perspective, then I want to go back to those kind of businesses. I want to go on airlines that serve you and think about you instead of trying to rip you off with charging you extra money for taking a piece of luggage on a vacation. I mean, I just think businesses really need to recognize that every moment that they have with the public is a moment of truth. And when you're coming from a more spiritual perspective, a more giving perspective, living from the cardinal virtues, I think you can run any business that way and be totally at peace. If other people around you want to go crazy, I watch the stock market closings at 5:00, and I just can't imagine allowing myself to be in that kind of an environment. I guess if I were, I would practice going within, getting quiet, finding that inner Tahiti that I spoke about earlier, and running my business that way. But I think that's why you see so much anxiety, so much stress, so many people hooked on drugs in our society, so much obesity in our society. You see it because people are living stressful lives and making stressful choices. You don't have to run your life that way. And when you get quiet within and go within and practice meditation and living in that silence and living in that void and finding love and seeing it everywhere, you start manifesting it and miracles begin to happen for you. All I can say is it works for me, and it has for most of my life.
That's beautiful. Now let's shift gears to your book, Excuses Be Gone, which shows people how to change their lifelong self-defeating thinking habits. If you had to select just one way people could change their limiting thinking, what would it be?
The most important thing would be to take responsibility for everything that you are and everything that you've become, and to rid yourself of any blame.
Wayne, how do you handle adversity?
Every storm that has come into my life, every difficulty, I look at it as a gift, and I don't ever look back with regret. I take responsibility for all of it. And I think another very important principle here is the recognition that all of the stuff that comes into your life, even the storms, have something great to teach you. You know, the Tao teaches us that it built into all good fortune is misfortune, and built into all misfortune is good fortune. And so just being patient with it and knowing that when you're in that lower state, when things aren't going the way you would like them to go, that there's something grand that's going to come out of that if you have the patience to be with it.
Now, one of the other powerful beliefs that you have is that people are only one thought away from changing their lives. Can you tell us what one thought and how one thought can make such a difference?
Yeah, it's just that's what I conclude the movie with that line, that it's only a thought away. That it goes like this. The greatest gift that we all have, every single one of us has, and this might be the most important thing you hear in this interview if you're listening, is the gift of your imagination. Everything that was once that exists was once only imagined. And you heard me talk about Thoreau's definition of success. If you advance confidently in the direction of your own dreams and endeavor to live the life which you have imagined. So if your imagination is the greatest gift that you have, dreams are free. Nobody can take your dreams away from you. You can imagine anything that you want. And most people don't realize how powerful what I'm saying is. You know, it's what Earl Nightingale called the strangest secret. You know, that we become what we think about, whether we want it or not. So the first step in this process is to be able to use your imagination the way you want it to be. This is very, very fascinating because this is about what contemplation is really. When you ask what is a thought, you know, that you can have that, can bring you bliss or success, when you begin to contemplate with awareness, which is instead of contemplating what you would like to have on the basis of what your experience has led you to believe or what viruses have been implanted in your mind from the time that you were little about what you can do, what you can't do, what's possible, what's not possible, and so on. If you could think with awareness, which is right straight out of the New Testament, with God, all things are possible. When you can think from that perspective of all things are possible instead of think this isn't going to work and it's impossible or I can't do it, and if you can go to that place in your imagination and then feel it in your body, if you can do that and use that kind of subjective attention, like every time the subject comes up about what it is that you would like to create in your life, including a great business or a great relationship or healing your body or whatever it might be of anything, if you could go in your imagination to that place and assume the feeling in your body of that wish fulfilled, feeling free, and then the last 5 minutes of your day before you go off to sleep at night, if you could allow your subconscious mind to review not the things that you don't want or you don't like or that aren't working, but instead to review all of the things that are in your thoughts as a result of your imagination, because your subconscious mind can't make a distinction between what you are feeling in your body as a result of your life experiences or what you are feeling in your body as a result of your imagination. So why not begin to use your imagination in a way that you create what you want for yourself in your life? And then in the last 5 minutes before you enter of your day, before you're about to fall asleep, and enter into your subconscious mind where you're going to marinate for the next 8 hours in the place where manifestation takes place. It's the subconscious mind where all of this takes place. And as you begin to get rid of these viruses in your mind and have these new thoughts and these new imaginations, you'll start seeing yourself, and this is where the magic starts happening. This is... It's like you begin to contemplate like God contemplates. Like when Einstein was asked a question about quantum physics, he said, it's all detailed. He said, I just want to learn to think like God thinks. And how does God think? God doesn't think about things being impossible, and that's you. That's your source. That's what you came from. You must be like what you came from. You didn't come from your parents or from particles. You came from a spiritual energy that knows that all things are possible. When you start thinking that way and let your subconscious mind marinate in these kind of thoughts on a regular basis, you start attracting these things into your life. It's called the simple law of attraction. You know, what you think about is like that's the energy that you put out there. And if you're always thinking, gimme, 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 I need more and more and more, the universe's response back to you will be, you give me, gimme, gimme, and I need more and more from you. You'll always feel stressed. But when you're thinking in ways where you're thinking with awareness, and you start saying, how may I serve, how may I serve, how may I serve, what can I do to make the world better for other people, the universe says back to you, how may I serve you, how may I serve you? Here's a way to get rid of your smoking habit. Here's a way to overcome your speech impediment. Here's a way to make a better relationship. Here's a way to make your business work. And it just always flows. And, Carl Jung called this concept synchronicity. It's just a simple collaboration with fate, because you're now thinking in alignment with success rather than thinking in alignment with it can't happen or poor me or I'm a victim. And that's the way you make your mind work, and why I say and end the film, The Shift, with that idea that it's only a thought away. Change the way you look at things, and the things you look at change.
So the last two questions for you, Wayne. You are featured as our success legend in this issue, so it begs the question, when it's all said and done, what do you want your legacy to be? What do you want to be remembered for? What do you want to have been your greatest and memorable contribution here?
To have lived your life in such a way that you've made a difference for just one person is to have had a successful life. And I'm content knowing that myself.
Great answer. So one last question, Dr. Dyer. I love the quote, people don't attract what they want, but they attract who they are. So obviously personal growth is an important component to this whole equation and this life journey. And we have featured your expertise before in the pages of Success Magazine. And as you know, we're committed to helping our readers excel in all areas of their lives. So tell our readers why you think it's important for people to continually learn by reading books like yours and certainly a publication like Success.
Well, when you stop learning, when you stop growing, when you stop yourself from becoming all that you were intended to be in that moment of your conception, once you stop growing, you no longer are alive. And I think that's true both physically, and I think it's spiritually, I think it's true, and I think educationally as well. And that's why I applaud magazines like yourself, like Success Magazine, and encourage people to continue to stay in a state of growth, because it means that you're alive.
Well, Dr. Dyer, it has truly been a delight to be with you today. Thank you so much for sharing your insight with us here at Success Magazine, and truly appreciate all the contributions you're making in the world. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it very much. I enjoyed it.